Hi, everyone. Welcome to Data Ethics Professional Webinar number 9. Today, our special guest is Jesslyn Dymond, who's joining us from TELUS in Canada. So we're so excited to have her here today. We're just going to give it another minute or two while people get themselves logged in. So while we wait, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself in the chat, we'd love to see your role, where you're joining us from geographically, where you're joining us from sort of organization wise. We're always excited to see who's joined us today. So can't wait to see. Jesslyn, how are you doing? It is early where you are.
Oh, it's early and it's dark, um, but I'm doing great. I'm excited to be here. We're celebrating in Canada. I was just sharing our baseball team had a big win last night, the Toronto Blue Jays, which is my home team. So it's
Super, that is super
good
exciting.
energy.
So Jesslyn's, we're so excited to have her here today because she's going to share with us a lot about why data ethics is so important in the private sector. A lot of our previous webinars have focused on sort of more public sector, third sector type organizations, and this is really a key insight for us today to hear from her about why this is so valuable to her. So, for those of you who are just joining, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself in the chat, we'd love to see. I know there's some familiar faces in the list. Well, I should say names. So, we'd love to see where you're from, where you're joining us from.
Oh yeah,
Donna
there's
said
Canadians
hi.
on the call. Woo woo!
Yeah, another Canadian. Donna, were you watching the Blue Jays last night? One of our other data ethics professionals, Emmy. Hi, Emmy. Glad you're here. Emmy works in for a local council in Hackney in London, so we'll be, I'm sure, interested in hearing about the crossover between the stuff that you've done, Jesslyn, in terms of, individuals having some control over their own data compared to what they do in the public sector. Just having a look at who else is joining us. I'm seeing lots of familiar names now from data ethics professionals courses. Cora, great to see your name pop up. Cora is one of
Yeah,
our
nice
one of our
insight.
data ethics professionals in the NHS. A lot of healthcare data.
Wow,
Right, great. I love to see all these
all over the
introductions.
world.
Um, Greece, Nigeria, fantastic. So exciting to see that people are joining us from all over the globe. We're so happy to have you here. All right, I think as people, ooh, Washington, D.C., great. So
Cool thing about doing the data ethics professional course is meeting peers from around the world doing this work. It's amazing the global impact of the work of the Open Data Institute.
Oh, thanks. Right, so Jesslyn, if you wouldn't mind going on to the next slide, I just want to sort of do a little bit of housekeeping. We're going to start in just a minute. So people are starting to introduce themselves. Thank you so much for that, everyone. Lovely to see. Um, we have some Q&A things today, so we're going to have some time for Jesslyn to answer questions for us. There are two places that you can do that. One is in the webinar chat, which is obviously associated with your name. We'll see who asked the question. That's fine. So I'll be keeping an eye on that. And also we have a Q&A box. So within Zoom, there's like a separate Q&A section. That is just seen by us. So I'll be keeping an eye on that as well. If you want to ask a question in a more anonymous way, you can ask it there, but I'll be looking at both places. So sometimes people like to do it in the chat because other people can see the question and comment on it or, sort of chip in with thoughts and other like follow-on questions. Sometimes people like to do it in a more private way. Either is fine. You just do what works for you. So I'll be keeping an eye on those and then I'll sort of curate those and lead the discussion after Jesslyn finishes her talk. So we'll have a few minutes at the end for that. Probably about the second half of the presentation will be for the Q&A. We will be sharing the slides and the recording after the event. So if anybody wants to sort of signpost people to this that weren't able to make it today, but you think it's relevant for some colleagues or other people that you know, please feel free. Um, And also there's a QR code on the screen if you would like to join our mailing list for updates for when the next data ethics professional webinar is and that kind of thing. Please feel free to sign up for the mailing list with that QR code. All right, I think next slide, Jesslyn, this is the intro one. So, as I was saying, Jesslyn is joining us today. She's the director for AI governance and data ethics. I know she worked hard to make sure that that title covered AI governance and data ethics. So, I'm really intrigued to hear sort of her thinking behind that. So Jesslyn leads TELUS's internationally awarded approach to responsible data-driven innovation, and she was recognized as the 2025 Responsible AI Leader of the Year by Women in AI in North America. So it is such an honor to have you here today, Jesslyn. Thank you so much for joining us. For those of you wondering who I am Kay Achenbach. I am Senior Learning Specialist, Head of Data Ethics at the ODI. So I lead the Data Ethics Professionals course. Jesslyn did this a few years ago and recently sort of updated her certification for this by sort of communicating with us all the good work that she's done around data ethics and responsible AI since the time that she originally took the course. So when she did this, I was just blown away by the work that she'd done. And I was like, Jesslyn, please will you join us for a webinar and share with us what you've done? It's amazing. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Jesslyn and she'll talk you through the work that she's been doing for the past several years.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kay, and thanks to everybody who's shared where they're calling in from in the chat. Really exciting to see the engagement and also those shout outs for the Blue Jays. So let's go Blue Jays. But as Kay mentioned, I'm calling in from Canada. And Canada is the traditional territories of many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. And where I live in Canada is now known as Toronto, which is the traditional land of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. So in Canada, we do acknowledge the land that we're on as an act of reconciliation. So that recognizes the Indigenous peoples whose territory is where we are. And today I'm going to share a little bit about TELUS's journey of reconciliation when it comes to data and AI. But I encourage each of you to learn more about that reconciliation in Canada with Indigenous peoples and the relationship between people and the lands where you live and that data and AI, that's sort of the digital layer of the space we live in. I have a background in geography, so that relationship between people and the land is very important to me personally, but I think something that tells us a lot about who we are and that obviously shapes our digital ecosystem. So who is TELUS, this Canadian tech co? So we are in a bit of an evolution in TELUS from being a telecommunications provider in Canada to being a much broader technology company. And that's very exciting for a data person like me because there's lots of different domains in which we do business. Obviously the network and all of the connectivity that we power, but TELUS has a huge presence in healthcare as well and agriculture. And so all of these different domains are very much driven by data and are having significant transformations because of technology. But the part that connects all of those different areas of our business is really the people part, right? Making a difference with technology for our customers, be it providing better healthcare services, ensuring that we have a sustainable food supply chain, or connecting people so they can do the really cool things that we get to do with data, the internet. And that ties into our mission at TELUS, which is really helpfully making the future friendly together. And we also have a commitment to social capitalism and giving back. And that is informed by our customers and communities. So we really try to focus on putting our customers and communities first. And that helps me a lot when it comes to things like data ethics, because those values inform the way we do business. And connecting the services we provide and the difference they make in people's lives relates very much to ensuring that the data that we manage is used appropriately. So I'm sharing a little bit with you about who TELUS is, but the team that I'm part of is called the Data and Trust Office, or more, corporately DTO. Everybody loves their acronyms I guess in many institutions. And this team has evolved so significantly since I've joined since 2019, but it's a team that's been around for over a decade. So TELUS very early on recognized that we have these critical fields like privacy, data governance, information management, data ethics, and they are difference makers for the business. Significant investment was made in ensuring that we had a data and trust strategy, which really manages that relationship between data and trust. And so lots of different teams within the Data and Trust Office. My role is leading the AI governance and data ethics team, but it is very collaborative. So I work closely with my colleagues on our data and innovation team. I believe Lucas is here. We have health privacy to focus on kind of navigating the various legislations in that space around the world, global privacy compliance, data governance policy, incident management. It's really a team effort to ensure that we're using data in a way that is going to be trustworthy for our customers. And Kay mentioned that I was very insistent on setting up a program around data ethics. I was hired to build out the Responsible AI program, but it's my belief that we should have responsible IoT, responsible devices, responsible software. There's so much attention and impact that AI is having right now. So I don't think we can get away from the focus on responsible AI. But to me, responsible AI is really the application of data ethics in practice to a very specific technology family and an ever-evolving and growing family, and we'll speak a little bit about that. But the data ethics is the core. So our framework for data ethics informs how we apply responsible AI. And obviously now AI governance, just understanding where we're using the technology, how it works, its limitations, its capabilities is a significant part of the work my team does to really ensure that we have that foundational governance program over this rapidly evolving technology. So today, in the time we have, I'm going to share a little bit about how and why trust is that differentiator for TELUS, and how that and why we have a DTO. Data and Trust Office, and the culture of data ethics that supports that across our organization, and then some examples of how we do this in practice. And thankfully, the Open Data Institute is sharing some of the links to our program along the way, so jump in and check them out. So data ethics to me is very much connected to the trust that our customers and communities place in us. And it is a really important and fundamental differentiator for how businesses can be successful. If customers don't place trust in an organization, it will be not so great. And so when we talk about trust, I think social license and that view of how you are perceived as an organization is so critical for supporting the innovation that you want to do, that you have products and services that make sense and are adding value. And also for talent, I think people are very interested in understanding why organizations do what they do, and that trust and ethics can help frame the conversation. And there is a bit of a business case here. I mean, we regularly do research with our customers and communities to help inform the work we do. And here are some of the stats from research we did last year, and we do this every year, our trust survey. And you can see that there is a really important relationship that is perceived between trust and how data is handled. In this world where everything is digital and there's such active adoption and growth and experimentation happening with AI, I think one of the coolest side effects of what's happening with AI is that it's renewing this fundamental interest in data governance and understanding where data came from, why organizations have access to it, what they're allowed to do with it. And that is really renewing a recognition of the importance of having proper processes in place for managing that information. And so the way that data is handled can be very much connected to a company's brand, to the type of work that they undertake, and really their role in helping educate consumers in how they're managing the data that they have access to. So again and again, we are hearing that consumers are looking for meaningful oversight by people and how their data is handled, robust safeguards, and transparency. When we set up our responsible AI program back in 2019, we made a public commitment to using AI responsibly on our website, and that's part of what has been linked to you in the chat. What you'll see there is not just an information about how we handle AI, which I think builds upon so much of what we've already done in the trust space, but information about how AI works and how we use it. Because as much as we heard these worries and concerns, there was a lot of interest in understanding what the technology is and how it will work and how it could impact them. And so that is very much part of what we need to do as a business, is help people understand both the opportunity of data and where it's going to have an impact on them. Oh boy, I think we skipped one there. So with AI, obviously these concerns and opportunities scale immensely, and we have an annual report that we put out that shares the voices of Canadians on how they are hoping to see AI be used and what they are looking for in the way that it is adopted. So again, that is in its second edition, and some of the statistics that we learned about are shared here. I remember when we were putting this report together this year, one of the most interesting stats for me, and you'll see that in the report, is this 1% factor. So we have 1% of research participants, over 5,000 Canadians were involved in this research, said they were comfortable with AI being used without human oversight. So that's a pretty stark number. And it makes sense, I think, with everything we know and what we're learning about AI. But at the same time, what's the biggest buzz in AI right now? And what am I seeing all over my desk when it comes to our business initiatives is the adoption of agentic AI and agents that operate without human oversight. So I regularly refer back to that to help inform the way we set up these agentic systems to have that meaningful human oversight and accountability, because that's what consumers are worried about, and I think very rightfully so. So having data and information can help build out your program and drive the way the business is building out new technologies. But it is very critical when it is tied back to trust. And as I said, to that mission we have to help inform and ensure that people understand how technology uses and how it can impact them. So transparency, communications, UX design, these are all conversations that we have as part of building trust in the technology. And I think the impact for business here is incredibly immense and such a great opportunity. So, you know, what I really loved about what I learned from the Open Data Institute and continue to emphasize throughout my work is that focus on ethics, not just being about risk management, right? There is so much opportunity and interest in these technologies and in how they can have impact on our business and society generally. We have an imperative to understand the opportunities, the benefits, and where technology is working well. And it's nothing more frustrating than when it doesn't, or because it can be built in a way that is really adding value for people. So we talk about trust as being what determines how far we can go and how fast we can go. And working in the private sector, that conversation about being able to get to production, to be able to deploy quickly, to not be slowed down by compliance activities is a really critical narrative we need to navigate. And so there is a model that we have for trust, which is shared on our website, called the trust model, and that really guides all of our decisions and assessments when we're using data and AI. And for us, trust is earned through using data in ways that generate value, that promote respect, and deliver security. And if you don't have those three parameters of value, respect, and security, then you can't have trust. So when we're looking at initiatives, those are the different areas that we really need to explore. And so trust includes respect, which is where I think we have that very direct line to ethics. So building a culture of data ethics in an organization is an ongoing journey. It is really, really important and been something I strive to do in my career to be to ensure that we're not constraining innovation, that we are really seen as what helps make innovation go faster and more successfully or sustainably, arguably. You can have like these really exciting launches or quick sort of hype cycles, but if you want to build enduring success, it's critical to have planned for and considered that human impact, to explore the unintended consequences or the opportunities that an innovation might arise when it's used in ways that are unexpected. And so we work very hard in the Data and Trust Office to be that accelerator and enabler of innovation. And that has to be supported by a culture and values which really embrace the responsible adoption and innovation with technology. And so as much as we are a team that is supporting the reviews and identifying controls, we have a huge focus on literacy across our organization. And I thought it was really interesting when I was asked to lead our data literacy program, because it wasn't just data literacy on the ethical use of technology, data, AI. It was also about how to use data. And this is something TELUS focused on very early on, well before the advent of this AI era we're living in, having those skills spread widely across our team member base. So even people who aren't necessarily in a role where they're doing data science, we provided education on what data is, how to manage it, how to do analytics with it, understand its life cycle and its provenance, but in really accessible and meaningful ways that are connected to the various roles and activities happening throughout our organization. And this really fostered our data stewardship program. So we have a curriculum defined for our data stewards who are embedded across our organization and are really an extension of our team. There is so much great work happening in the Data and Trust Office, but very I think very wisely, our VP has ensured that it isn't on us alone. With the volume of data innovation, which has just grown exponentially with all of the AI projects we're seeing now, but it is insufficient to have one team focused on the responsible and ethical use of data. So we have over 500 data stewards across our organization, and that's a growing and very active community who receive certification through our team, who receive regular updates and learnings about how to manage data and trust and responsible AI, very specifically from my team. And that helps us drive adoption of responsible innovation throughout the organization. And those data stewards are appointed, their strategic roles, and they really become that connection between how data and AI is used across our organization and the roles that we have within our office. So having that kind of layer to help support agility, to extend our reach, and to be able to really create safe innovation and set up those structures for experimentation and learning and sharing knowledge through the community of data stewards has been critical for helping drive out AI adoption. So when we talk about data ethics, what does that actually look like? And I'm going to share some examples of what that looks like when it comes to AI in a moment. But I think where we see the most real connection between the work we do in our office and all of our team members across our organization, and is focusing on ensuring that the use of AI and our products and services remain human-centric. So having that focus on human oversight and really connecting our products and services with our customers and communities. And that's one of our values in our organization, is to put customers and communities first. And so a question I regularly ask our business when they're telling me about some awesome new thing they want to do is like, okay, let's go back to how this will put our customers and communities first, and how can we help our customers and communities understand that benefit in a really meaningful way. And so that's using the language of a business and our leadership to help connect the work of data ethics with the way that these new products, services, experiences, interactions are being involved, connecting with the humans that we're ultimately creating them for. And a very big part of the focus and how we help anchor the work we do is through processes of participatory ethics. So ensuring that we have processes to do engagements, to do research, to co-create, identify opportunities where we can actually create that quote unquote voice of the customer, which is a big thing in marketing or design thinking, but bring that in as part of our ethics processes. So it's not just, you know, the ethics team saying this is important or this is something that matters. We regularly go back to our community to be able to make that connection and say, hey, this is what folks in this area or this group are looking for and are wanting to see as a benefit in this space, which really resonates with a lot of the product development research and creates that connection between our teams and other groups that are focused on doing that research and engagement. So making the connection between the values you have as an organization and the work that you do, I think, can go a long way in helping sustain your program, and ultimately ensures that you're going to get that trust, because respect is one of the pillars, and that respectful use of technology is necessary for trust. So I'd argue that having this focus on data ethics isn't just good for our organization, but it's really essential for the broader industry. It is so critical to have more examples of how to use technology well. As I said, it's very disappointing to me to see some of the headlines and the hype that we do about just huge technology fails. Like what a missed opportunity to get it right and to bring about the positive benefits and the opportunities that this incredible human ingenuity can ultimately get us to. So a big part of our focus when it comes to AI is contributing to the dialogue and the development of standards and best practices in the space of adopting AI. And that means applying our principles, which are listed up there from our responsible AI framework, which we've had in place since 2019, that really are fundamental to how we use data across the board. So one of the biggest ways we've efficiently developed our responsible AI program is to build upon the processes and the success that we already had in building out data and trust, data governance, using those, the kind of like machine of how you activate governance in an organization through a model of data stewardship, through a unified assessment process. So we do what we call a data enablement plan, or a DEP, and that includes things like our privacy impact assessment, our security review, our data ethics and algorithm impact assessment, all in one streamlined process for our business. So we're not like asking them to explain themselves over and over again to different compliance functions. And we're also really focused on the how and that enablement factor versus like giving them the approval on whether or not they can do something. And a huge part of that is obviously risk management, identifying ways to mitigate potential concerns, building out proper testing frameworks, and identifying opportunities and educational resources that support the rollout of really groundbreaking initiatives. So having that kind of alignment to the global standards development community, and there's lots of examples there of how and where this work is happening. I think I wanted to just introduce HYPE, the last one there, the Hiroshima AI process, which is a reporting framework that is being developed through the OECD. And I believe the link was shared. And that's an opportunity, I think, both for organizations to share the work they're doing in this space and how they're building out systems for AI in alignment with some of the principles that are being called for globally. But it's also a really great place to learn about what this looks like in practice. So it's ultimately a reporting framework that where organizations who are doing this work in responsible AI can provide examples and demonstrate what they're doing, but also share that with the broader ecosystem so that other organizations can learn about how to get these sorts of programs into practice. And, there's also models for certification, which I think is another critical factor for building trust. So it's one thing to have a really solid framework and set of practices within your organization, but that will, really set you up to be trustworthy. But in many cases, being trusted really relies on that independent validation. And so going through certification models like the ISO 42001 for AI risk management, one that we've done again and again, is the privacy by design certification with ISO, which has really helped us kind of ensure that we have those processes in a way that are going to make sense and add value for our customers. And being able to point to that external validation and audit can really help demonstrate the robustness of the services that are being stood up. So lots of different controls that happen, and there are very unique, I think, practices and techniques that are required when it comes to building out AI technologies. But I think fundamentally, when we talk about accountability, transparency, respect and fairness, this is so critical for any type of data-driven innovation. And there is incredible attention and focus on AI right now, as there should be, but I would argue there are many examples of where data can be used, and these considerations need to be made that are outside of the AI regime. So lots of good work happening in this space. And I also just wanted to mention, I have the Responsible AI Squad listed here as one of our vehicles for helping build this kind of alignment and momentum across our organization. So I say to our team, there's nothing like AI to really bring us all together. And because it is, thanks to some of the latest tools and techniques, so accessible. The cool thing about these generative technologies is that you don't need a lot of technical skills to be able to use them, to be able to see how they work well and where they clearly have some limitations, but that resonates with people immediately. And I think that relates to why they're so popular, but it's also a huge opportunity for building kind of momentum and ensuring that we're having that conversation across all of our different groups and communities, because there is, I think just such a alignment opportunity to ensure that it's really working in a way that is adding value for everyone. And our Responsible AI Squad, which includes members, it's grown obviously very, very much across the company. And so it's more of like a monthly forum now where we have different work streams and activities that are happening that report back to the Responsible AI Squad to just make sure that we have these practices, awareness of our policies, and also that sharing of initiatives where things are happening in a really good way across the company. So the Responsible AI Squad is certainly what helps us put this into practice across our company. So I wanted to share some examples as we wind down the official presentation format or component here of how we are doing that engagement and human-centric innovation in practice. So we have an initiative that I'm very proud of called Purple Teaming, and you can read about it in our HYPE submission. The Purple Team grew out of one of our very early AI initiatives at TELUS. And so one of the cool things that I think happened because we had this strong partnership and really trust internally between our CIO group, our AI teams, and my office, because we worked so closely together when we were focused on like machine learning. You know, I'd work with the data scientists and our AI engineers all the time. And then when generative AI arrived, all of a sudden our program had to scale very quickly to the entire organization because everyone had AI at their fingertips in just incredibly impressive ways. And so alongside that scaling, we made the choice to really build our own kind of ecosystem for being able to access large language models. So we have a tool that we developed internally that allows team members to be able to innovate and experiment using generative AI in kind of like a sandbox, which has a number of different guardrails. And this was something that we co-built between the governance teams and our engineering group. But this worked so well internally that we started to take use cases to market. And TELUS has a generative AI powered customer support tool. So when we were looking at some of the model specs for the models that we were using, one of the things that was suggested as a practice for implementing generative AI, and this is like back in 2023, there was a little note about doing red teaming. And I'm like, oh, what is red teaming? I think we should definitely do that. And so I knew it was something that happened in cybersecurity. So talking to our friends on the security team, I learned about what red teaming is. I learned about what blue teaming is, and ultimately heard about purple teaming, which is a really good fit for something like AI development, where you have these, you know, really fast sprints and cycles of development, where you have both the attacker mindset and the fixer mindset together in the same group, trying to ensure that a system is robust as possible before it is deployed, and kind of work out those potential unintended use cases or prompts or surprising output. And the way that we implemented purple teaming at TELUS was to open it up to all of our team members. So in addition to all the traditional kind of development, QA, testing, we went and added this purple teaming process to how we deployed our AI tooling. And I was really insistent that this becomes something that is available to everybody. And so we opened it up for anyone across our organization to participate in the purple team. So you have folks from finance or customer service agents working alongside the AI engineers who develop the solution. And what this really enables us to do is to be able to bring that diverse set of mindsets, of experiences, of expertise, and just different ways of thinking together in a really dynamic environment to stretch and explore what's possible with AI technology. And this is possible because of how accessible the generative AI tool sets are. And so we went through a whole round of purple teaming, found all these really interesting things that kind of opened the eyes of our tech team, who were like, oh, wow, this was so informative, and really brought different voices and different perspectives to the development pipeline. And so this is now a critical function that we both obviously do in a very human-centric way, bringing together teams from across our organization, but also help automate and scale to be able to do the testing that's required both in the development of an AI solution, but in its ongoing monitoring and oversight, because these things evolve. So think about purple teaming, think about ways to engage, you know, all sorts of different users across your organization. And, you know, my favorite kind of unintended consequence of purple teaming is that it is very much an exercise in AI literacy. So people are getting to learn how these tools work well, and where they don't, very in a very hands-on way, and get to use the technology, which I think is so important for having informed conversations about it. Another example of where we are very much learning from our customers and communities is with our Indigenous Advisory Council. So as I mentioned, TELUS is very much focused on our journey of reconciliation with Indigenous peoples in Canada. We have an advisory council who have been super engaged, and who I regularly share updates to with respect to our work in data ethics. So we have a number of commitments as part of our reconciliation action plan, and one of those is incorporating Indigenous perspectives into our data ethics strategy. And I feel like this is just so extremely relevant when it comes to AI, because if you think about where these large language models are coming from, what they're trained upon, these challenges of data bias and historical injustice are just amplified at scale because they're built from a very, very narrow set of views. And the opportunity to learn about different ways of learning, of different types of intelligence, and systems of knowledge, which are clearly not reflected in the AI tools we currently have, is immensely important. And one of the things our advisory council had really tasked us with is thinking about the impact of, and this is quite early on, the impact of generative AI on images and representation. And so we made a declaration that we would not use generative AI for the creation of images of Indigenous people or the artwork of Indigenous people. And this is a beautiful image you should check out that was created by Ken Latander, a human, to kind of tell that story of how we navigate this incredible opportunity of AI technology, of the, revolution we're living through in a way that is respectful and incorporates the incredible wisdom and ways of thinking of people around the world. And so it's just such a beautiful artwork, and also a story that Ken put together alongside it that I think extends our thinking and informs the importance of why we need to have data ethics baked into the work that we are all doing in trying to help navigate the incredible transformation that we get to be part of. So with that, I wanted to invite you to really join us on this journey. There's some links that have been shared throughout the presentation, and of course, learn more and hear from the insights that we are sharing and learning from and helping inform our program as we go. So thank you so much for this opportunity, Kay.
Oh my gosh, Jesslyn, thank you so much. That was an incredible wealth of information. I've like literally
Yeah.
taken so many notes of questions to ask you because I think what's incredible to me is the scale of your company. So how big is TELUS? Like, do you have a sense of like how many people?
I think we're about 75,000 people around the world.
Okay, so
So I recognize
massive.
not a small, medium enterprise, right? And
Yep.
there's always that challenge of scale.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, Joe's just put in the chat. Do you mind like
Yeah,
stopping
I gotta
sharing?
figure out how to stop sharing.
I
Sorry.
suppose so they can see our faces. So, like, I guess what's really amazed me about what you've just said is you said so many things that, when we at the ODI work with organizations, either through our training or through our consultancy, so many of the things that you touched on are things that all organizations are trying to do. And
Mhm.
I think because TELUS is so big, they've been able to invest the resources in like doing this really, really well and sort of, making sure that all of these different threads are sort of like embedded into all aspects of the company. So that was like something that has just blown my mind. And I have many more questions about that. I want to first come to some of the questions that are in the chat. So John asked, how do you ensure you get customer engagement and feedback in a timely way? Do you
Mm.
have an established customer ethics panel or similar? And how far do you go to ensure that it's representative? And I'm curious here, I'm going to add to this question as well, because obviously John's talking about customers in general. You also mentioned your work with Indigenous groups. So do you have like different groups that do you have like sort of separate customer groups and the Indigenous groups and like work with them? And can you give any advice to any of the people in our audience here who are also trying to do similar to engage with their external stakeholders?
Wow, thank you. Such an important facet of, I think, building out the program ethically. So this has been a really big learning experience for us. And I would say in large organizations, and I think in many different companies, there is a focus on customer research, right? So very early on, we started establishing those relationships with our marketing teams, with our customer insights groups. And I fully recognize that there's a benefit in having those functions sort of established. But there are organizations that will help you and have panels and regular insight groups at their kind of ready to go. So that's a critical factor for us. What I would also say is, and I guess on that lens, given the scale and really wide range of products and services we operate, there's lots of different insight groups that we work with and different relationships that we manage and navigate. So we kind of help shape the development of the engagement process. I know building relationships with people who are doing user experience design or have like that function of really creating that voice of the customer and product space can be very, very helpful, because I think you can share your expertise around what the metrics or measures are for data ethics, what you're trying, the outcomes you're looking for, and they can share some of their expertise and how you go about getting that, using their own expertise on the tools and the practices and the survey designs and the focus groups and all of that good stuff. Beyond that, our partnerships have been incredibly critical for us in this space, with obviously academia. Like there's so many researchers, students, I think a massive growth on understanding the relationship between AI in particular and its impact on people that's happening in the research space. So across different faculties of universities, be it we have like AI engineers who are dabbling in ethics, and we have ethics professionals who are dabbling in AI and seeing these new disciplines emerge. And often there's a lot of work happening there that helps augment our own research activities, and I think lots of opportunities for collaboration. In Canada, we have 3 AI research institutes, Vector, Mila, and Amy, and we work with all of them to help support our own learning internally, but also to be able to scale those conversations and dialogue and learnings that we need to help support our programs. And I think getting out there is another thing. So the work with Indigenous peoples and with youth have been huge focuses for TELUS because of some of our business priorities and the work we've committed to. I think this isn't something you need to start from scratch, right? And I think there are programs, there are places where these types of conversations are happening. And so participating in events, looking at other, like maybe the school board is doing something around technology, obviously a lot of interest in AI in education, and that can create those opportunities for having these conversations and that mutual learning and collaboration that helps inform the development of these types of practices. And I think with Indigenous peoples in particular, we have a number of relationships where it is both from our advisory council. So we have an established kind of board around our work on reconciliation. And so it's not at all something that I'm coming up with. I am helping share the work that's happening with technology, and then building upon the relationships and the partnerships that we have in place because of the incredible work that's happening through our reconciliation strategy team. And that could be the same for any of the other stakeholder groups. And what I also want to emphasize, and I think that is pretty unique, but important to note, is in our official annual reports, the Responsible AI report we put out every year, we are very intentional about including underrepresented groups in our official research. And that is why we have over 5,000 Canadians, is because we ask for newcomers to Canada, for women, for youth, for Indigenous peoples to all be represented in the data set. And this was very intentional because of some of the kind of lack of engagement and the maybe missing inclusion of those voices at the development table for AI. So it was really important to us to ensure that we created that space and we're able to ensure that we had all of those groups represented in our research for our report. So it takes a little creativity, but I think there's a lot of just calling upon who you know, that helps make this happen in practice.
That really struck me when you were talking about the work that you've done with the Indigenous groups, because obviously Indigenous concerns are special and they are important. What works for Indigenous groups probably also works for a lot of other underrepresented groups in terms of more data sovereignty, more of a say over what's happening. Like these things, that translates really well to other important goals around, sort of
Yeah, there's
inclusion and
so much
equity.
to learn. And I feel like it's silly to say, but it's so important to stay. If we're not building, like if we're not doing responsible AI, what are we doing? And so it is imperative to just think about where we can really expand our knowledge, our thinking, and that actually makes it work better for everyone, which is critical.
Absolutely. Thank you for that thorough answer. Right. Next question here. Nick asked, and this is zooming right out. I have a number of questions like aligned with Nick's now. Nick said, Jesslyn talks about trust as a business differentiator and a competitive advantage. How's this translated to the bottom line, i.e. revenue for the business? Maybe, I don't know, can you measure this? Sometimes I think people want that bottom line, they want a number. And sometimes I'm like, are these things, how quantifiable are they? I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a hard question for me. I really try to avoid quantification, and looking at the results from some of those surveys boggles my mind. But I do think there is absolutely a business case that is made there, and if not any, like just going back to the importance of the value of your brand. And one of the things we talk about quite a bit is the difference between compliance and ethics. And there are things that you have to do, and there are things that you should do. And when it comes to serving your customers and earning their trust, I think having a conversation about what you should do is far more successful in translating back to those business benefits. Another thing we talk a lot about is the acceleration. So with AI, obviously tremendous adoption of that happening within our organization, which is leading to a number of awesome business benefits. And that I think is only possible because of the structures we have in place around doing these assessments and being able to identify risks in a really streamlined and consistent fashion. And so that helps us get things at the door much quicker and be able to scale the resources that we have most effectively. And so there is some metrics around that time to market and the benefits that unlocks that is, I think, tremendously important for helping in those resource conversations.
That was one of the things that you said that really struck me is the way that you have helped streamline all those different assessments. Because one
Yeah.
of the things that I hear from a lot of other organizations is like, we don't want data ethics to be like yet another tick list, like yet another roadblock, a barrier on our way to getting these things out the door. And the work it must have taken. I'm so curious to hear more about this. How did you align all these different things? Because you wrote, or you were talking about the sort of like data governance checklists
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
all these different types of things.
I think
How
it was
did
like 7 assessments, the first one. We'll talk about the business case, right?
you?
I mean, that was completely driven to success because of the buy-in we had from the business on not having to do multiple assessments. And I mean, there's challenges, I think, in just efficiency there, but also in like storytelling, like maybe security gets a different story than we do. And so there was really, really good reasons to bring those processes together to do that kind of optimization of what questions we ask and the logic. And so we had made commitments about ensuring that this process was very, very relevant. Either like, am I going to have to do more work now because I have to do all these other assessments? Was a conversation we had to navigate, but it was it was truly part of our quote unquote digital transformation work, our work to become an organization that is data and AI driven, to have this process in place as a key enabler. And it could not be something that was going to add those additional layers of friction. And so that has to come in partnership from the business, I think, to be able to say, hey, yeah, this is what's going to help me be more successful in how I develop and build products, services, and experience.
So much of what I hear people say is things like, I'm a data protection officer. I'm filling out data protection impact assessments. I don't know if this is ethically right, but it's not really part of my job. But I'm sitting here saying, like, I don't feel comfortable with this. How do I know who to go to? And it sounds like part of what you've done in your organization is like get the right people all together to make this streamlined thing. Do you have any advice for someone who's at the beginning of this journey in terms of like, who do they get in the room to start this
Yeah.
conversation to do that, to make that joined up efficiency happen?
Yeah, I think focusing on data governance, which I believe surprisingly a lot of work in the data ethics professional course was focused on. Like, get to know your data governance team. And then I feel like today in this world, you got to know the people who are building AI, right? Like, and one of the coolest things that happened when big data and analytics became such a focus was the renewed like interest in data cataloging, like knowing what data you have, knowing what you can do with it. That really helped drive out a lot of this revolution, because there's real challenges in not understanding your data. Like, it will impact the quality of your analysis. And so with AI, it is 10x that, right? Like, the reason why AI may not be hitting the mark is ultimately because of the data that it is that's fueling it. And so you've got to find those folks and help them understand the difference that responsible stewardship can make.
That leads me to my next question. Michelle said, and I had the exact same thought, Michelle, I'm impressed by the size of the network of data stewards you've embedded across the organization. What range of responsibilities do data stewards have to enable responsible data and AI? And I want to add to this, how do you get them to do it? How did you get the organization to support these roles? Is it part of their paid role? Is it,
Oh, I think it's like a quarter of their role. I'm not as close to the program as I was, but it is officially part of like their performance management and their role. But I think what was very critical for the success there is building it as a strategic position. Like, everyone has these things they have to do. We tried very hard to make this to be something that they wanted to do. And with the interest in data and AI right now, like, you can really drive that momentum and that passion that people have for understanding the impact of this technology and how it is going to transform their
because
business.
people really care. People care.
Yeah, people care. People are interested. They're doing like the LinkedIn learning on their own. They're trying to understand what to do with this. And I think it was just some super fortunate timing that we had built this structure of data stewardship certification. So we have different levels of data stewards. They have different specializations. They get access to external training and events, guest speakers. It's really a community that's driving innovation for our business and becoming like that go-to expert. And they have some very tactical responsibilities that support compliance activities like managing data inventories and processing activities, but and the assessment review process. But they're also there helping implement and direct the strategy for where data and innovation happens in their business. So again, being something that people want to be part of, I think is super critical for success.
Oh, that is amazing. I wish we had more time to talk. We were drawing to the end. I feel like I hardly got through any of my questions because we've had such an interesting discussion. I wonder if you could reshare the last page, I think, which might have the just our little wrap-up slide for our next things. Um, so thank you so much, Jesslyn, for joining us. I know we've had some other questions in here about what I've just saw you now I look. Joe's put it in the chat as well. So don't worry about sharing it. Joe's put our links for our
Thank
next
you.
webinars that we've got coming up. So Jesslyn, is it all right with you if people reach out on LinkedIn if they have any further questions? Same to me. Please feel free to add me on LinkedIn, everyone, if you'd like updates on when our next webinars are. And I think we should all join in like a virtual round of applause for Jesslyn for sharing with us this incredible amount of work. My mind is boggled by the amount of like really detailed and excellent work you've done. So thank you so much for sharing this with us, and thank you so much everyone for joining us. And can't wait to see you all at our next webinar.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's great to share with you all.